one can fall into the trap of distractions to fill this void of emptiness. And this can touch on, the Christian theology of the 7 deadly sins, not the anime.
Yeah.
Which, if we think about it, it's the 7 deadly sins, they're often associated with immoral acts that lead to displeasure, acts that impact your life negatively. And so when it impacts your life negatively, to get out of that, you need a new set of guidance or ideals, or you just spiral down that rabbit hole of negativity and you never actually come out of it, and you actually become more dark, you become narcissistic, you go down a pathway of just not the best pathway. But the idea of 7 deadly sins, step me through it.
Yeah, sure.
What are they, and what it means?
Yeah. I think like 7 deadly sins is a thing that didn't just come from Christian theology, like Christianity in general. I think like the idea of sin is like in every religion, like in Islam, it's in like Judaism, Buddhism, and etc. And I think based off what they explain and say, it's based off, I think, a lack of purpose and like moral and ethical like compass as well. And usually it's driven by desires. And usually in those states, when you do commit those sins, you're either like, you have no sense of purpose, you're either empty and you're looking for something to fill that emptiness. And usually it's artificial. And and then I think with 7 deadly sins, it's talking about the extremities of these scenarios. So to go over it, I think we'll go with the first one, which is lust. And lust is basically excessive sexual pleasures, and the pursuit of excessive sexual pleasure, and you're seeking relationships without any deeper emotional connection or any ethical considerations.
So you're using sex as a tool of pleasure rather than purpose.
Yeah, purpose. Or even like instead of building meaningful relationships, you just want to fulfill your sexual or physical desires.
And there has to be a line though, right? Like it's the excess.
Yeah, of course, it's the excessive amount.
Okay. Just making it clear. Sex isn't bad, only if it's in excess without deep and meaningful relationships.
I think it's like without intention, right?
Yeah, okay.
And then you do see like some of those characters of, like, I'm not going to really name it who, but you see them online as well. And they're not like, they also, because they lack discipline in the physical means in sexuality, right? Sexual means they also lack discipline in other areas.
Yep.
And then because their emotions are their relationships are very transactional. It's like, hey, I'll give you money, you give me sex in return to fill this emptiness that I feel.
They have OnlyFans and prostitution.
Yeah. And like, then that also goes over to other aspects of their life, like other friendships that they have, other business partners that they have.
Yep.
Is extremely transactional, and it's only for their own best interests, but not rather thinking about other people's as well. So it sort of transfers over to like other segments, I think.
Seems like there's a bit of lack of the catalyst there to the impacts in your relationships is the inability to build meaningful relationships because of lust.
Yeah.
Right? It's this fact that your brain is so consumed, like you said, of that one pursuit that you can't actually seem to, and like you said, when it carries over to everything else, I think if you can't build meaningful relationships with people, you're in trouble. Like a lot of times, good things come from building good relationships with people, and not just relationships with women, but like a relationship with your boss, with your parents, with your grandparents, with your family, with your friends, with strangers. I mean, so we're not designed to be transactional, which is a good word to use.
Yeah, and to add on to your point, I definitely agree. Like, it's not just about like your partner and stuff. It's about other parts of your life with your boss, in professionalism and other aspects. And I think you realize that the most valuable ones are where it's like mutualistic or symbiotic, where it's like both parties are benefiting and you're providing value to each other essentially.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what this lust, 7 deadly sin is really emphasizing.
Lust, number one. Number two.
So the second one is gluttony. I feel like everyone has this. Like I definitely gone through a phase of this where it's just like overindulgence of food and drinks, and you're not really, you know how you like eat really quickly? You're not really enjoying like the flavors or anything of the food. You're just eating quickly, and then it's just like, and then you have like candy and all this other stuff.
I'm very guilty of that.
We all
I don't know why you've called me out like that.
No. I'm saying we all are.
I'm joking.
I'm also guilty of this as well.
Yeah.
And it's just like excessive consumption, and it also like compromises your health and well-being.
So is this excessive consumption of food, or is it excessive consumption of anything?
Well, food and drinks, like anything that gives you that, I guess, pleasure through your like
taste buds.
Yeah.
Most simple way, right?
Yeah, like, but it's basically excessive consumption.
Excessive consumption. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And you know that obviously leads to a lot of health problems and health issues. And
Is how a lot of cultures push the idea of fasting? Do you think
true.
that probably comes? Do you think that's where it comes from? If you think about it, like fasting, and I'm not going to speak as a scientist or a medical doctor here, but just looking purely from a spiritual, or even like let's look at it spiritually. Like fasting, you're empty stomach. You're building your discipline. You're fighting off those cravings, which might draw you closer. I know in Ramadan, one of the reasons you guys fast is to sort of feel what the unfortunate feel. Correct me if I'm wrong. Part of that, I believe, but also there's a spiritual aspect of fasting. So it's interesting. Like I know, like I'm pretty sure Christianity has some level of fasting. Hinduism has fasting. Judaism probably. I don't know. Can't speak for the Jewish community. But
Buddhism does it.
Buddhism does, yeah. So I wonder if that's where fasting comes from. And from an evolution point of view, like we're actually not designed to have a lot of food in us. Like we should, because we've got an overabundant supply of food now, especially in the Western culture. I'm not speaking for other countries or cultures, but for Western cultures, there's so much food. There's an oversupply of food. There's an influx of food. And then that's where gluttony comes in. People just over consuming without actually understanding what that food means or what that food does to you.
Yeah, definitely good points. I think also like the food is, somewhat processed.
Yep.
So it's not the same quality as the food that our ancestors would have, where they would go out and hunt, and it's like genuine organic type of food, not processed, gone through any other processing or anything. So, and yeah, you're right. Like I remember reading about how like our ancestors would have like one meal a day. It was like a massive, huge meal that they would hunt and like share amongst everyone else. There's like all this idea of like sharing in a community as well. So it's not just one for themselves. And I think that's what gluttony really emphasizes on, where it's just like you consuming everything for yourself and just enjoying it. And whereas you should be able to share this, like these foods that you consume, and that actually minimizes gluttony as well.
That's actually a really good point. Sharing, yeah, and it goes into the act of like kindness and being empathetic, So that's quite interesting.
Exactly, and I think I want to touch on like what you're talking about with fasting. Part of it is like empathizing, but also I think part of it is like I think you were touching on it, which was abstaining from temptations. So like that increases your willpower, so it increases your resistance against those temptations that you might have on other aspects of your life. Because during fasting, well, in Islam, it's not just about avoiding food. Like there's certain music that we can't listen to where it's like swear words and profanity. We can't also obviously drink water during that period. We can't have sexual pleasures in any of those things. So it's like almost like you're resisting against all these 7 deadly sins, or from sinful behavior essentially. And
so it's just not food, it's abstaining from behavior that tempts you into sinning more.
Exactly, that's correct.
Yeah.
And I think it's really about spiritually developing yourself and actually making you understand that you don't need a lot of these things. You will actually feel a lot better resisting a lot of these things that you think that you need, but you actually don't. So
you do need music. I'm joking.
No,
No, I agree.
But
I agree. It's what music leads to.
Yeah,
Is that
pretty much.
part
Or
aspect
it
of it,
keeps
yeah.
you distracted or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. So it's really about like self-discipline, development, and just like obviously connecting closer with like God and things like that.
That makes sense.
So
Yeah.
it's a lot more than just like, I think, just empathizing. It's really about development and progression. And I feel like that idea is in a lot of other religions as well, but like probably translated a bit differently. But
Yeah. Practiced well in Islam, though, I will say that. Good point. Third sin. Hit me with the third sin.
So this one is greed. And
Oh, we're all guilty of this in some
we're
way.
all guilty of this, definitely. So it's pursuing wealth and possessions, and you can think of materialistic things without any limits.
Gambling.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
And seeking pleasure in material accumulation, and without any sort of deep understanding of why you want this thing. It's probably more because of the fact that you want to be able to show to other people, and also realizing the impact it has on other people as well, and the consequences of like accumulating all these types of material things.
So the interesting thing with that is there's two aspects to it, right? You have an aspect that you're attached to these materialistic things, and so at that point, your attachment to that becomes me, like that's mine. And the more of that you have in this world, that's mine, me, mine, you actually start to forget what you truly here for, in the sense, right? And I don't mean this, I don't say this lightly, but the less attached you are to things, you'll notice, the happier you are, right? I think being able to understand in your mind that within a minute, within a second even, right? Within a second, your entire life can change. You could lose everything that you had, right? And that happens. Like that one course of action in your life significantly changes the course of your life, whether for the bad or the worse, for the better or the worse. But if we think about like greed, like the idea of just accumulating everything for yourself versus not sharing, showing a false sense of who you are, you're so attached to that you're not attached to the real things in your life. It's materialistic things that guide your life rather than spiritual and deep and meaningful relationships, for example, or strong values that guide your life. It's all materialism, and you're so focused on accumulating more and more that you actually forget your ideals. I've seen this with people. I've heard stories and seen it's just they get more and they just want more and more. It's an interesting one. I mean, I haven't gone through it myself in that from a wealth perspective, but I think if I'm looking at it from my career, like I think I could have been more grateful for what I had at that point. And the second part of it is the social comparison. Like, I think you said that earlier was the comparison part, where you showing people that you have all these materialistic things actually doesn't help other people around you. It actually makes them feel worse. I had a friend I saw, and she's progressing, and I think she's building a house, and she was telling me like she asked me if I'm on Instagram, and I said no, like I've just taken a bit of a break from Instagram. She's like, yeah, she's like, people are asking me why am I not posting the progress of my house on Instagram and putting it out there. And for a moment I was like, dude, like how can you imagine, like, first of all, good on her for progressing and doing that in her life. That's a great goal. But the fact that her other friends are probably telling her, hey, you should post and let other people know that, you're making it or you're doing well, you don't get anything out of that. There's so much more satisfaction with your little wins, keeping it to yourself, than just putting it out there for everyone.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I totally agree with that. I think I remember watching like a podcast with Chris Williamson and someone else, I can't remember her name.
Right.
But she does like marathon running and stuff. And she's saying like how social media has sort of messed up our, being able to celebrate our wins. Like we feel the need to be able to share it with people online. And she was at the end of the race, and she took a like nice selfie where she's smiling. And she was so tempted to like post this, But then she stopped for a second and said, if I post this, then I'm allowing myself, like 90% of the comments might be positive, but there's going to be that 10% that are just going to say something negative and ruin like the joy of the race that I finished. So she didn't post it. She kept it to herself. She's like, this photo is just for me to, be able to like have joy of the fact that I completed this race. Because once I allow it online, I'm giving myself the permission that 10% of someone is going to say something negative and that's going to ruin the moment for me. And I was like, wow, that's such a good point. Like sometimes things that are sacred to you, that you've gone through so much struggle, you shouldn't feel the need to post it to everyone. And yeah, there's inspiration and stuff, but I feel like just keep in mind, you're also giving yourself permission that someone out there is always going to say something negative and you're going to feel miserable about it. So there's like that idea as well. I think it's not a bad idea sometimes to obviously like, let people know what you're up to, but not frequently, and you don't have to share everything. Oversharing.
I agree. Yeah. I think with that aspect though, is if you're willing to post your wins, be willing to post your losses. And if you're not willing to post your losses, then don't overly post your wins. And the reason I say that is because the way I view things, and I think the way you should view things in general, is not everything is going to be your highest moment in life, right? So you can show the world your highest moments, but are you really prepared to show the world your lowest moments? The moments where you're sitting there thinking of the most negative things in your mind, right? Or you've recently, are you willing to share that bad relationship that you're going through, but you're willing to post the good things of it? Are you willing to do that? If you're not, are you really happy? Are you really winning? Right? Because there are wins in life, but they shouldn't be seen. Look, you're allowed to win. You're allowed to celebrate those wins, and you should celebrate those wins. But also don't forget the fact that you're going to go through losses, and you're going to have to sit through those losses in your moments and really dig deep and think like, wow, like I'm at my lowest point, right? Because a lot of people have the lowest points. A lot of people have a high point and a low point. That's fine. I just think that if you want to post your wins, be prepared to post your losses. If you can't post your losses, don't be someone that wants to show everyone the world that everything's great. Because fundamentally, every single human being will go through good and bad. That's just a matter of life. Like look at the royals, for example, right? King Charles, a royal family. These guys have all the wealth, all the power, everything that they need. Unfortunately, sadly for him, he's got cancer, right? And hope he recovers, hope he does well. Now, Kate Middleton, the media put so much pressure on her as the next Diana or whatever, right? And, she's had 3 kids. She's gone through all that. You can tell she's had a good level of power, or not power, but wealth, exposure, publicity, right? And I don't think she's a bad person. I think she's a good person based on what I've seen. But now she's been diagnosed with cancer, right? So that tells you no one is actually free from the consequences of bad in life. I know we've steered away from was it greed? Yeah, it was this conversation, yeah, but you are not free from. You're not free from the losses. You're not free from the bad times. You will go through the good times. You will go through the bad times. But it's simply, if I was to tie that back to greed, is there's no point highlighting all of that, because within a second you could lose all of it. Lose the attachment, you'll feel better.
Yeah, that's a good way of bringing it back in. Yeah, I agree. I think bringing it back into greed. Yeah, I think obviously it's a bit difficult as well, because for some people they're trying to market themselves as someone who is like this type of person. I'm this type of person, and you should therefore listen to me, and etc. etc. So greed is a bit difficult to balance, but I feel like your intentions and how your intentions matter with what you're trying to persuade and what you're trying to influence, and also making sure that you are genuinely content. Being content basically means being peace at where you are with what you have. Because if you're not, then no amount of money, no amount of possessions or anything is going to feel that. Because people think, right, that once I get this, I will feel better or I'll feel much more amazing. And let me tell you the truth, happiness does not increase. It's always going to be the same. Like your state, it's your dopamine receptors, like your reaction, right, to it, which is always going to be like same. Like as in, for example, I get a Ferrari, right? Yeah, I'm going to be feeling amazing for the first like 1 minute or something, or like first probably hour or something, first day. Treat it like a baby, wipe it down, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But then, say like I go on a 5-hour drive and there's no toilets and I'm busting. I don't care about the Ferrari at that point. I only care about being able to like release my, just piss basically.
Well, you park on the side before you piss, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
But yeah, I get your point.
Well, say like it's even worse. Yeah.
Your focus is different.
My focus is different. And it's like once I'm able to just, chuck a piss, then I feel relieved. And that sense of like relief and like joy or whatever is almost the same as getting a Ferrari in that state. Because that's all I'm focused on, all I care about. So it's like...
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a different type of perspective, but it shows you how like we always think we're going to be more and more and more happy, but it's really not the case.
I think about people marketing themselves. There's two aspects to it that I see. I know we're sort of going off track, but I really want to get these out.
Yeah.
But there's something in the Bhagavad Gita that I know. I can't remember the full quote of this, but let me bring it up very quickly. What's the fourth sin, by the way? Let's get into that, and then I'll go back to...
Yeah, we'll come back to what you were going to mention, yeah. So the fourth sin is sloth, and it's basically avoiding responsibility, being lazy, allowing other people to take accountability and responsibility for your actions, and just being not present in anything. You're just sort of hiding away because you don't want to take on the consequences of even like the problems that you might have created. You're just in the background and as like a shadow. And so it's like a lack of engagement, lack of initiative. You're waiting on the other person when you should probably take the initiative to start something or do something about this problem that you're having at work or something. So basically you're not contributing to any progression or any growth, even with yourself. It's like you can just imagine someone who's locked in a room, just watching videos all day, playing games, that's it. And there's nothing wrong with playing games or watching videos, but you're doing absolutely nothing. Like you're like a NEET, basically, they call it. But you're just that person who just locks themselves away in a room doing nothing with your life. No progression with even yourself.
Well, there's many aspects to that. You lack purpose. You're not living a fulfilled life for yourself. And so you go down a pathway of gluttony, self-indulgence. You start lusting for the wrong things, if I look at it that way. And then you go down a pathway where you look at other people and you start to compare yourself, which doesn't lead to a good place. But the second aspect of that is you're not fundamentally doing what is right for humanity. And what I mean by that, if you think about it, every single person on this earth lives for a reason. And what I mean by that is they do different things that contribute to an economy or contribute to society. Right. Now, are there injustices? 100%. Is there unfairness? I agree there are unfairness. I don't think society will ever, if we look back from a historical perspective, will ever be fair. Right? But you still have to try for your own sake to be a better member of society, to be a better person to that stranger next to you, to be a useful member in some way, right? And I know people see this, they go, oh, well, the government's trying to control you, they tax you, and you're just down this whole path. But shift your perspective for once, right? Shift your perspective. Like, are you really capable of something else? And everyone can probably answer, yes, I am. I'm capable of something. Cool. Pursue it then. Or instead of thinking that you're locked down in your mind from the government or whatever, because you have to pay taxes as if it's required, are you really thinking of it in a healthy way? That just because the whole system's really against me, I need to be lazy? No, you have to find a way to beat the system in a way, or work with the system that works in your benefit. But for laziness, like, it's just, it can start off as one thing, but I think it's that one thing that just branches out to so many different parts that goes absolutely nowhere for you. And it's just a very wrong place to be. I just want to say,
going back
on
to
the previous point, bringing up the quote now. The overall message of this is, you have the right to work, but for the work's sake only. You have no right to the fruits of the work. Desire for the fruits of work must never be your motive in working. Never give way to laziness either. Perform every action with your heart fixed on the Supreme Lord. Renounce attachment to the fruits. Right? And I think the way I see it, let's, if I was to just decipher that quote, it's fundamentally saying, like, you shouldn't work for your own greed and desire, but work for the good of others. And I mean, that's really hard to do. I mean, financial, like, money is a motive, right? So you can't really say, I don't work for money, because you fundamentally do. That's one of the reasons why it kind of contradicts the purpose of ikigai, right? Like, you have to make a living. So I guess it's saying, though, is that you shouldn't get greedy into the what comes from that work. You should be focused on that, like what is that? Like, you should be focused on delivering the best work and finding something that you do it for the better of others, right? And like for marketing, like if you speak about influence marketing, like people marketing themselves, they're focused a lot on, I just want to make the most money, right? Whereas if you have a perspective of, I just want to add good value to people, I want to bring something that people can use to become better themselves, then you're no longer, I wouldn't consider that greed. You're doing your actions as a person.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. Just going back to like your point that you explained with greed, because I really liked how you said it. I definitely agree. I think, like, as I said, it's like within intentions. And I think what you were talking about, which was the good for other people, I think that concept is called utilitarianism. I can't
Utilitarianism?
Yeah.
Utilitarianism?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Right.
That's what it's called, where you think about the good for like society and everyone else in general.
Yeah.
And and of course, there's nothing wrong with making money. You have to make money. Everyone's got families to feed.
We got to survive.
And you got to survive. Yeah, of course. That's how this world works, right? So I think it's obviously your intentions. So you don't want to come to the point where you break your morals and your ethics to make money, where it's like you're deceiving people, you're lying, and you're stealing, you're cheating. Obviously, there's going to be some psychological tactics you use to sell things. But it's not to the point that you're deceiving people completely, where you're trying to create like some sort of like scheme and rip people off, and so you're providing value is the most important thing,
Exactly.
which benefits people, and I think that's what's most important with.
Fundamentally, I said the way, 2 questions. Is it providing value and good for humanity? Or does this deceive, like you said, fool or wrong people? And if you can answer either one or the other, then you know it's either good or bad.
Yeah, definitely.
We're on the 5th sin, right?
I think we didn't fully go over like sloth. I think we broke halfway in, which was like laziness and sloth. Yeah, you brought up a lot of points about how it's not just sloth, like being lazy. It leads to a bunch of other sins that you would commit. It makes you think that sloth is almost one of the most dangerous in a way as well, because like the laziness ends up creating all these other sins that it would tempt you into other sins essentially. And I think a lot of it, we've all fall into this state of rut where it's like you've had a lot of progress, then you're at a point where you're stagnant, and that's where you can really fall into the sloth. I've been guilty of it as well at times, because your motivation and everything like depletes because you don't see any progress. You see the same thing every day and day out. You feel it's mundane and everything like that. And yeah, you really can fall into that category of laziness where you just end up giving up and you just end up just sabotaging everything that you've built up towards. And yeah, I think with laziness, yeah, it's definitely obviously a lack of purpose, but I'm trying to remember the point that I had, sort of slipped away, but yeah, I can't remember the point that I had.
We'll come back.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. Yeah,
We'll come back to it. Okay.
Yeah, I think like you definitely need to take responsibility and accountability, and because at the end of the day, I think the reason why a lot of us do fall into like the laziness route, other than like the lack of purpose, is because of it's the environment and stuff that we create around us as well. So we need to surround ourselves with, and also our desires. So you need to surround yourself with like an environment that encourages you and pushes you and challenges you, especially. I think that's the best thing to do. If you're in a state of stagnancy, do something that like challenges you in that state, because then you start to have also self-belief and conviction of what you're capable of, especially. Yeah, because I think another thing as well is like we indulge ourselves with artificial things like, playing games and watching movies, watching anime shows or cartoons and TV shows. And we actually have more commitment towards that than our own lives. So it's like when you think about it, okay, instead of this video game that I'm playing where I'm committing so many hours, what if I did that same thing for my life? And yeah, now I just remembered what I was going to talk about as well. It doesn't also have to be so grand, like your purpose. You don't have to do something so grand at a global scale, because a lot of people make it out like that, right? That can be very, I would say, very overwhelming, and you might give up because it's too big of a gap. Just start small, start just yourself. Once you're able to put yourself in a position where you are content, where you want to be, where you are becoming the person you want to be, then that's when you can start to think about like higher, like much more larger goals. I think that's why we can actually fall into laziness, because we create these massive goals which are way out of our scope when we are not even built to be able to do the small things. Like if you can't, like clean your room. I think David Peterson probably mentioned this something.
Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson, what was I saying? Yeah, Jordan Peterson, my bad. He said like, basic things like cleaning a room, and like looking after your health and things like that. Those are like the essential things that you should be able to do before you do like the large scale things. Because if you can't, clean your room, then you're going to create a mess in a lot of other aspects of your life, even in business when you're dealing with like complicated problems and people. So start small. Don't go grand. Have like the vision, but start small and progress your way through it.
That's a really good solution to this laziness. That was really good.
Yeah.
Let's go into the
fifth.
Fifth? We're in the fifth.
Yeah.
So we've spoken about lust, gluttony, greed, sloth.
Yeah, that's very good memory.
Yeah. I think when you enjoy what you're talking about and you're absorbing it, it's quite helpful.
Definitely. So the fifth one is, I think all men, we experience this. It's wrath, anger.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
This is like one of our most dominant emotions, like usually because of testosterone and a lot of other things. But it's basically seeking pleasure through expressions of anger and vengeance and like hostility and just revenge. And you only consider the short-term like consequences. You don't think about the long-term consequences of what's happening. So you only think about the short-term impacts and of how it's going to, and you sort of, I wouldn't really say you really seek pleasure through these things, but it compromises your relationships and your well-being by, being destructive through anger and, revenge and things like that. And I think it's it's something that's very dominant amongst us men, especially the ability to lash out like with frustration and anger very easily. And a lot happens in the span of like 10 seconds. Like, you know, those moments where you get heated when you're in an argument and someone's very disrespectful to you. It's in that span of 10 seconds, like it's so tempting to just be very violently aggressive. And a lot happens in that, basically, you know, those situations. And I think what this really is referring to in terms of 7 deadly sins is like the sadistic type of tyrant type of character. It's like personality or archetype. What would you like? I mean, what are your thoughts on wrath and anger?
Well, it makes sense. It's very self-destructive. It challenges. It goes everything against your values of. You know, simple question to ask yourself if you see yourself getting angry, and I've started to do myself is, what are you doing? Like, why are you so upset about something that is beyond your control? Right. And look, there's going to be moments where you're frustrated. There's moments where you're going to be pissed off, where you're going to be angry about something. I think you have the right to your emotions. As a human being, you have the rights to feel your emotions. You should be feeling your emotions. If you don't feel angry about things, I think you would be a very, 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 you'd be like a massive outlier. I think every human being feels anger in some way. So I think it's the right to feel that, but do you have the right to act on it? Right? And that's where there's things where there's 10-second lashing out, or in an argument, or whether it's hitting someone or saying something that you don't mean. Is it worth it? Probably not. But it happens. A lot of people say the truth usually comes out in anger.
What does that mean? Like,
so it means like if you're in an argument and you're angry at someone, and then you know you're bottling in how you feel. For example, right? So let's say I'm speaking to a friend. I think he's a total douchebag. I think he's
staring right at me.
No, I was going to stare that way. Imagining that for not. Let's say there's something that you just don't. You want to say to him, but you just don't. You get into a heated argument. Words fly around, and then you just drop that. You're at this, or you're at that, right? And I think sometimes anger does bring out the worst in people, but it brings out the truth, which is why it's important. No, but I think look, bottling in emotions is not good. The solution to that is just like fundamentally, you don't get anything out of lashing out, but you can gain a lot from just having a conversation. And I think Joe Rogan talks about this a lot. It's so, and I'm not on Twitter or X now, but people are so in this day and age are so ready to just say stuff online. So I was going to say it this way. People are so ready to just say stuff online and, you know, fight against could be a bot. But the fact that you get so worked up over someone that doesn't even have a real name, right? And you're like, I mean, I have this story, like there's this lady, I was on the train. I think I've said this story before, but I was on the train and I was listening to either Rogan, Stephen Bartlett, Chris Williamson, Tim Dillon, someone interesting, someone funny, someone good. But I was, you know, it's just, and there's a lady sitting right in front of me and she's on her phone. And she's a bit of an elderly person, probably late 50s or 60s, probably 50s, 60s. And she's got her text quite large on her screen and she's got a big phone and she's right in front of me and I'm like, okay. And this lady spent 40 minutes on that train ride. I kid you not, 40 minutes on that train ride. I don't look at people's phones, okay? Make that very clear. I don't look at people's phones, making that very clear. But this was like literally right in front of me. And I think she's a Republican, like Democrat, Republican, political. I'm not getting into politics, by the way, but she spent 40 minutes just typing the most ridiculous stuff. Sorry, for 40 minutes against like Democrats, like against whoever that disagreed, and she'd put a photo of Donald Trump in a GIF, and it's like, do you really want to start your day off with that? Like, you don't even know who you're arguing against, dude, on X. Like, why are you so worked up about this? You know what I mean? And I think that's what fundamentally has happened now. People get so worked up over things that don't even impact them, or maybe it does impact them, but you're fighting against someone that doesn't exist. It could be a Chinese bot. It could be anything. Like, you've lost your sense of, like, if you just question yourself for a minute, what are you doing? Or is this adding any value to your life at this very point? And 9 out of 10 times the answer is probably no. But to segue into wrath, has it become like it's been a known thing throughout history, right? But I think in this day and age, if people just sat down and actually spoke about their differences, you would get so much more out of that than arguing online. And 9 out of 10 people would not say the stuff to your face that they say online. I dare you. You know what I mean? Like, you are you angry about the person, or are you angry with yourself? Are you angry with yourself because you can't prove a point? Are you angry with yourself because you don't know much about it? Are you angry with yourself because you made the wrong decisions? It's on you. It's not against some bot. But do you agree? Like, do you see where I'm sort of?
Yeah, no, I definitely understand what you're trying to say, and I definitely agree that what you were, I think, mentioning was like projection, where a lot of the things that people post online, which is very frustrated, they're not really frustrated at the person probably. They're more frustrated and disappointed at themselves, but they're projecting it to them because of that's how they dissatisfied they feel about their lives, or especially like people that spend 2-3 hours, like these keyboard warriors online, like sending all these hate messages. It's like, imagine they put that 2-3 hours in their own life, how much better they would be, and how much their messaging would be so different. It'd be more like inspirational and more positive, or like even if it's like negative, it'll be more constructive, not out of personal attacks,
Constructive negative attacks.
No, like as in constructive feedback.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
it's not like out of like
agree.
saying out of toxicity.
Like it's politely disagreeing with someone's point and actually putting up a good argument to that.
Yeah, not personal attacks like, oh, because you're like this built, because you have this, like you deserve, like you're wrong.
Bro, you're wrong. You're a giga chad.
Exactly, because you have a sharp jawline. You seem like someone I would trust. Like it's
you could sell them alone. You could sell people like that anything.
Exactly.
This guy's sharp jawlines, like, hey, here's my pyramid scheme.
You don't even know if
guys.
it's like if it's been like plastic surgery or something, or if it's photoshopped.
I think we should do that.
So like this is what I'm saying, and like it's all like this is what I mean. And
I've got a 2-for-1 deal for you, buddy. Here's my jawline. No, sorry.
So, no, I definitely agree. A lot of it's like projection, and with anger as well. It's actually a very powerful emotion because it's the way you use it. And I think I did explain this before. Like, it's either you can be a sadistic or a tyrant or a bully, like a sadistic warrior. And you see a lot of these characters in like movies, like the guy who literally bully, like not even the strongest, like he would fight against the weakest character. I cannot think of a movie right now. Maybe it's like in Never Back Down or something. The guy was like the MC. He's like very weak at the beginning. He got bullied a lot, picked on a lot. You see this type of character in a lot of movies. And then they get bullied by someone who's stronger and bigger than them. So like that's like the sadistic warrior, and usually angry and frustrated. But a lot of the time they're just projecting. Like they're actually disappointed and annoyed at themselves of the way they're built. And for some reason, this person had to be the victim and they just picked on them because they're weak. It's easy to bully that person. So the sadistic warrior usually like picks on someone who's weaker than them and like projects their anger on them and frustration against all of them. But instead of using anger that way, the way you can use anger is, because anger at the end of the day is like an explosion of energy. Like you feel a volcano is going to erupt. So what you have to do is, and you also realize your breathing pattern. That's a very important thing. Like when you're angry, like you're having short breaths, like when you do boxing and stuff, right? Sometimes when you get frustrated, someone hit you in the wrong area or something, you get the like short breathing, right? Your breathing becomes very short. Your temperature rises. You get a lot of adrenaline, and you're just tempted to, just throw something, like a punch or something. You have to control your breathing in that state. And I think a lot of religions or like spirituality stuff, they really emphasize on breathing, because it's all these emotions you experience. Next time you experience like anxiety and stuff, identify the breathing you have as well. I know we're sort of going away from
it's okay. Let's
anger, but it's very important that you recognize and identify what emotion you're experiencing in your breathing pattern. So when you go through anger, I think the best tip that I really got was like, if it's either distance, is maintain distance from that person and just control your breathing. So just take deep breaths, and like that way you actually telling your brain to like calm down and like be more composed. And I'm not trying to say you shouldn't feel angry at all. You will experience it, definitely. Everyone will. You should be able to experience anger. You're human. But it's recognizing why you feel that way and what you can do about it. Because with that explosion of energy, that can become a catalyst for taking action. And taking action, you either have a destructive or constructive way to do it. Either you lash out and you just burn everything and you burn all the bridges and you destroy the relationship, which creates a lot of long-term consequences, which also people don't think about, right? Mm. When they do it, they only think about, I am right, I should do this, I am justified, this is therefore justified for me to hit this person. Whereas the long-term consequences could be, this person could go to hospital, you could be in jail, or you just jeopardize like everything you've built up towards, even the decades of years, all gone because of this one thing that you just reacted on.
Like one punch. There's one punches, that person unfortunately falls, hits their head, dies. And it's like, oh, well, I didn't mean to hurt him. Well, it's the consequences of your actions. And you should be in jail for 30, 40 years if you do a one punch and you kill someone. That's my view. But yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely. So like these are the things up to think about. So like it's breathing, realizing that explosion of energy. How do you use that in a strategic way rather than a very reactive way that puts you in a disadvantage and destroys everything you build towards and even harms other people as a result of it. So the strategic, and the main thing is all really maintaining distance as well if you really need it, because you can sometimes erupt and be very reactive.
That's a really good point. I think that maintaining distance is probably like one of the most important things you need to do, I think, in anger. I've started to do that. It's just stepping away from that situation. It's just step away. Don't say anything. Don't say a word. Just step away. Step away. The moment you step away, gather your thoughts, you'll actually thank yourself a lot for that part.
And it'll be a lot more productive of an outcome as well. You just say like, let's just take a bit of a break, come back to this a bit later. And you're not letting go of the anger, right? You still have that thought that you have, but you're being more constructive about it and more progressive rather than regressive and reacting negatively about it. So I think that way, and then that way you use that to then benefit everyone else around you. So it's in a positive way that you're using like anger. So I think that's a very important and a more like it's a more I would say it's more an enlightened anger way of using it.
Enlightened anger, new term, interesting. Add that to our dictionary.
But I think you covered it really well.
Like I think you did too, bro. It's not just me. What's the next part?
So the next one is envy.
6th, right?
Yeah, 6th. So almost there. So envy. I think everyone experiences this, comes back to social comparison again. Finding pleasure in desire for what other people possess, what they own, without the negative impact on one's own contentment and relationships. So jealousy and things that you see in social media and what this person has, and you feel this sense of resentment towards this person based off what they own and have over compared to you. And that in a way ruins like your own satisfaction of your life. It's like, why? Because you're always in this state of comparison. It can be very damaging in your relationships as well. Especially because you end up, instead of talking about like with your friends, how you can progress, or like, you know, even just catching up regularly, like normally having normal dialogue conversations and inspiring one another. You're gossiping about this other person who has this thing, and you're just talking behind their back and trying to make yourselves feel better about something when you're just in a state of toxicity and you're around, and if you have people that support that, then you just you're in a state where you're just shame, guilt, and you just feel miserable about everything. So it's the extremity of like jealousy and envy.
I think the good point you raised about was you never step out of what you can do. It's always focusing on, oh, they've done it, that person's done it, I need to be able to do that. You know, there's a quote that I was just bringing up, again from the Bhagavad Gita. I've actually got a few good quotes from that, but it really relates to this is, it is better to live your own destiny imperfectly than to live an imitation of somebody else's life with perfection. And I guess that stresses that focus on your own journey rather than other people, right? Look at your own driveway before you look at the neighbor's driveway. Like, that's what fundamentally you're meant to do. You don't get out of anything of comparing yourself to people. You don't gain anything. Like I said earlier, if you go and sing and you just see it, look, again, I'll go down a full rant about this, but again, are you willing to share your losses? Goes back to that point, right? Like, if you're envious of someone that's just sharing their wins, you have not experienced life. You're going to lose in life. Like, this, with 10 wins comes 100 losses. You know, with 10 successes comes 100 failures, right? I mean, let's look at this podcast. Like, I think people will probably listen to this, you know, and I think we might see this in 5 years' time, or whatever, and be like, oh, well, that wasn't great. But if someone just looked at this now and be like, oh, look, they're doing quite well, or whatever the comments are, whatever the view is. But it took us 6 months to actually get to this place. 6 months. Not even. Like, we had the idea from last year, August. So how much failure did we go through? Right? We didn't even know how to use Rodecaster Pro. We had an $800 equipment we didn't even know how to use properly. You know, we had mics falling off. We had disruptions. We had helicopters. We had cars. We had people. We had kids crying. We had the Peter Piper play the thing. We hear the peas. You know, like there was so much failure in that. But it got to a moment where it was the wins. And we're sharing our wins. I get that. Right? But I'm actually prepared to share my losses with you as well. I'm prepared to tell you that this process was not easy. There was so much work put into actually understanding how all of this is going to come together. And that was the part of the process. I think to get 5 episodes out, it took us 20 to fail. It took countless hours of editing Audacity, and, you know. And I think if we fundamentally just look at it, like, don't envy it. You know, like, if someone's not willing to share their losses, don't envy them. You know, you can inspire from them. I think inspiring from people is very important. That can add to your motivation. That's like your fuel to be better. That could be like, oh, look, that person's done this. That's quite inspirational. Am I capable of this? And then you start your own journey. But if you just go, oh, well, that person's got a X, Y, and Z, and they're doing this, and I'm not, and well, then you've taken no action. The whole thing is inaction. So there's envy and inspiring, then taking action to do better for yourself. And then there's envy and inspiring, or envy purely and jealousy, and you look at it from a comparison point of view rather than an inspirational point of view, and you do nothing about it.
No, I love the way you put it. Yeah, I mean, going back to like the podcast, like setting it up, there's a lot of issues that happened for sure. And we kept interrupting each other as well at the beginning. We kept saying like yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, just say a sentence. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how it started off.
It's a learning.
It's a learning process, and it's progressive. And I mean, before even going all of that, like, we actually got inspired by watching people like Chris Williamson, Naval, and just like all these Joe Rogan, like all these people that we look up to and watch podcasts of. That's where it started from, to be honest. And obviously we want to be able to like distribute knowledge and all these things and learn as we go. So But you see, like, we weren't envious of these people. Like, we were actually inspired by these people. And that was like a catalyst. And, you know, I'll give credit to them that led to us being where we are now.
100%, 110%. Like, that's what it comes. I mean, I wouldn't say we're trying to be podcast bros, and
No, not at all.
That's not the intention. It's not like, oh, we're just going to imitate what everyone else does. There's a lot of tons of other things that can make you different, right? But it's the fact that you're right. If those people can do it through their actions, so can you with your own journey and actions. And if you have the capability and the potential to do it, because you have nothing to lose.
That's really well said.
Right, but you have a lot more to lose, right? If this for me if it doesn't go well, whatever, but at least I don't have the regret I never tried. You know, choose your regrets. I got that from a Chris Williamson podcast.
That was inspiring. But that's really well said. I couldn't have said it you couldn't have said it any better, to be honest. That was really well said.
Yeah, I think the social comparison stuff, separate episode, I'm gonna have a full blown rant about this. But
yeah,
guys,
definitely.
don't compare yourself, please. There's no point.
Be inspired, just don't compare.
Yeah, I agree. And you are capable of doing better for yourself. As long as you're still breathing, as long as you're still here, as long as you have the ability to do stuff, you can do better.
I mean, the way I shut that idea off, like, you know, failure, is I think I told you about this, right? What Naval mentioned, which was like, everything is going to go to zero. It's very pessimistic, but it's true. You know, at some point, Earth will be destroyed. Universe, solar system will collapse. You know, something will happen. Aliens will take over. It's all going to go to zero. Why not just use the time that you have right now to live content and just like find what you want to be able to do and just not be fearful of anything.
Honestly, I agree. And don't be attached to things. You will lose everything. You will die in 30 years and nothing will exist. So why not create something that's going to benefit everyone or add some value to everyone?
Exactly, yeah. Give you the fulfillment and contentment. Yeah, that's definitely very important.
All right, last sin.
The last sin. Pride.
Oh, God.
I'm just imagining like Dragon Ball Z. Like Vegeta, the amount of times he said, my pride and all these things. But pride is basically like excessive self-centeredness. I guess you could say like egotistical. And it's like arrogance. And seeking pleasure and inflated sense of self-worth without recognizing the interconnectedness of like humanity and things like that. So I think it can really, I would say it's about your ego. You're feeding your ego a lot. So I think it's coming back to like the point where you said like, you know, you're attaching your identity towards the materialistic things that you have through numbers, like, you know, and your physique and all these things. That gives you like this inflated sense of self-worth. And on social media, when you share these things, you get a lot of likes and positive comments. So it even inflates 10 times and 100 times more than
you look so good, babe.
Yeah, so things like that, right? And that really, it makes you a very arrogant type of person, especially as well. And I mean, there's good and bad things to it, but I think it comes to a point where it's just, if you lost all that, like if that all was really gone, like you'd really lose your entire sense of self because you put your sense of self amongst how other people view you and things that are actually not something you own or have control over. Like, for example, the Ferrari could be destroyed. Someone could steal that. I don't have any control over that. The only thing I have control over is like what I know, like my knowledge, my skills, and that's really it. Like how I look after myself. So
you said it perfectly there. Are you okay to lose everything that you have?
No.
Then be grateful for what then.
No, I'm joking, but yeah.
Yeah. Then be grateful for what you have at that moment. And don't let your sense of pride get in the way that you will have these things for eternity. You will not have this for eternity. I think we said it like 2 minutes earlier. Everything will go to zero. You will lose everything. Everything that has ever existed of you will cease to exist. There is no point thinking of yourself as as the greatest thing to ever exist.
Yeah, like
because at a moment that can change, right? And with pride, I think with pride comes a bit of complacency. It comes a bit of sloth. And what I mean by that is when you're if you're just too prideful for what you have, do you have, let's use it in a context of a business. You've made it, you've done it, you've scaled a great business, done well. You're now your pride comes in, like you're a great entrepreneur, nothing can take over. You lose that sense of innovation, improvements, what your business stands for, purpose. And then comes the complacency. And then comes the downfall. Because everyone else is outworking you. So you start to become complacent, you start to get greedy, you start to look at like the wrong things to accumulate. Instead of growing yourself as a better person, growing your business as a better thing, you start to just focus a lot on what benefits me in the short term rather than the long term. But pride is too much pride of anything and not enough humility will lead you to a path that you will never have thought. Like it's a thing that you should see coming. Like everything that you do, everything that you have can be taken away from you. So there's no point being prideful about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, I think it's just recognizing that is very important. I think, and I don't really want to go into this topic, but we'll probably talk about it another time. But egoless versus ego, like being egoless and ego. I feel like that really would touch on pride very significantly.
Look, I agree. There is a certain aspect of ego that is important.
I agree as well.
I 100% agree with that. You have to be a little egotistic at times. But I think the distinction we're going to draw is too much pride, as you said.
Excessive. We're talking about excessive to the point that you're arrogant and you think of yourself as God.
Exactly.
Like God complex.
And you don't understand that life is a wave, ups and downs. You will cop the bad with the good. You will cop the good with the bad. It's the nature of life. Like what is yours today could be someone else's tomorrow, and it's going to be someone else's the day after. So why be so prideful for what you have now? Nothing's guaranteed. Sounds pessimistic, but it's really not.
It's just truth, to be honest. Like I've come to realize that, like, even this body that I have, I don't own this. I'm like, as in, I don't own.
Damn, bro.
I don't truly own this. Like, to be honest, like as in, like, obviously I have control. Like, I have to look after myself, but I don't own this technically. There's a lot of these things that I think that I own. I don't own for eternity. That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm just like in I guess a human body who has all these senses to be able to experience things, a bundle of experiences. I'll say a bundle of sensory organs that is going to experience things, and that way it sort of like depletes your ego. That's how I think of it. Like life is just experience. Like it's good and bad. You can't have good forever. You can't have bad forever. It's just going to be a wave, like you were saying. And I think that really kills away your ego a lot of the time. You're just a human body, or you're just in a body that is made up of a bundle of sensory organs that is just experiencing things. If I was to really define who I like, and removing the fact that who I am, that's what it is. Because if I say I'm a podcaster, I do like coding, this stuff, that's my ego. That's what people see. But if I was to really break it down to a molecular level, that's how I would define it. So I'll talk about it more of another time, of like egoless versus ego, because I think ego is important. And there's moments where being egoless is also very important as well. And like the balance of both. I think at the end of the day, with ego, it's just as long as you have control and consciousness about your ego and control over your ego. Because the thing that happens is people allow the ego to control them. And I like this quote, which was like, a boy is a slave of the ego, a man makes the ego the ally.
Oh my God.
We'll drop that another time. But yeah,
I'll you have dropped that's crazy. That's actually a really good quote. Wow. But I think we'll sum it up here. We've had a really good conversation today, 7 deadly sins. So to sum up, lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride.
Wow, Amazing memory. Yeah, you're right.
No, but I think we'll wrap up there. It's a great conversation. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and subscribe or follow us on whatever platform you're streaming this through. But we've got some great content ahead. So thank you. Thanks, Vasif.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Shiv. Catch you in the next one.